Disaster resilience. Disaster resilience is considered to be the ability or the capability of the individuals or communities to adapt to and recover from certain hazard or disaster. That is a disaster resilience. One thing to be noted is that the disaster resilience or the recovery should be without compromising the future development or the prospects for development. That is disaster resilience. Simply, it is the ability or how easily an individual or a community will be recovered from the hazard or a disaster. Okay, that is the disaster resilience. There are four elements of resilience framework. First one is context, second one is disturbance, third one is capacity, fourth one is reaction. First one, context. Context means whose resilience is to be built up, or who is a victim of that hazard or disaster, or whose resilience is to be built up. That is the context. Example: social group, region, institution, etc. Resilience of what? That is the context. Okay, resilience of what? That is meant by the context. Then second one is disturbance. Disturbance means resilience to what? Okay, what type of hazard or what type of disaster is occurred in that area? That is the resilience to what? That is disturbance. Example: natural hazard, conflict, insecurity, flood shortage, high fuel prices, etc. All these are comes under this disturbance. There are two types of disturbances. First one is shock. Second one is stresses. Shocks means it is a sudden event that impact on the vulnerability of a system or a community. That is the shock. It is a sudden impact. While moving on to stresses, it is a long-term event or long-term impact, long-term event that impacts on the vulnerability, that have an impact on the vulnerability of a system. That is the stresses. This is a short-term event and this is a long-term event. For example, here there are certain examples for these shocks. Okay, disease outbreaks, floods, high winds, drought, earthquake. All these are sudden events that comes under these shocks. Then moving on to stresses, the examples provided are natural resource degradation, loss of agricultural production, urbanization, climate change, political instability, economic decline. All these are long-term trends that undermine the potential of a given system or process and increase the vulnerability. That is, all these comes under these stresses. Okay. Then next key element is, core element is capacity to respond. There are two types. It includes two terms, that is sensitivity and adaptive capacity. Okay, first term is sensitivity. Okay, the ability of a system or process to deal with a shock or stress depends on two terms, sensitivity and adaptive capacity. First one is sensitivity. Sensitivity is the degree or the extent to which a system will be affected. That is the sensitivity during a hazard or a shock or a stress, to which degree or to what extent a system will be affected. That is the sensitivity. Okay, then next one, adaptive capacity. Adaptive capacity means the how well a system can adjust to a disturbance or moderate change. How easily or how well the system will be adjust to a disturbance. That is the adaptive capacity. The next one is reaction. Reactions is the is a response or a recovery. All this comes under this reaction, a range of responses. That is the reactions. There are four types of responses mentioned here. First one is bounce back better. Here are certain examples of reaction to disturbance: survive, cope, then recover, learn, transform. All these examples are comes under this reaction to disturbance. Okay, four types of responses comes under this reaction. Then first one is bounce back better, second one is bounce back, third one is recover but worse than before, and the last one is collapse. First one, bounce back better. From the term itself, we can figure out that bounce back better means the recovery is or recovered from the damages of a disaster with a better performance. Okay, the recovered stage or the recovered stage is much more better than the prevailing conditions before the disaster or the before the occurrence of the disaster. Okay, that is bounce back better than before. That is bounce back better. Okay, then bounce back means just recovered from the damages of the of the disaster. Okay, just recovered from the damages, and it is as similar as that of the prevailing conditions just before the occurrence of the disaster. That is bounce back, just recovered, and it is similar to the recovered condition. The recovered condition or the recovered stage is just as similar to the prevailing condition or the before condition. That is bounce back. Then next one is recovered but worse than before. Recovered from the damage, but the condition is much worse than the previous condition or the condition before the occurrence of the disaster. That is recover but worse than before. Then last one is the worst situation, that is collapse. These are the four response stages or the responses of the comes under this reaction to disturbance. Then next one is disaster management cycle. Okay, there are three stages in this disaster management cycle. First one, pre-disaster, then second one is disaster occurrence stage, and the third one is post-disaster. Okay, we can go through each one separately. First one, pre-disaster, that is before a disaster. The activities involved are preparedness and mitigation, prevention and risk reduction. Okay, this preparedness and mitigation activities comes under this pre-disaster. That is the control measures or the measures to resist or reduce the effect of risk during a disaster. That is the these activities mentioning mitigation and preparedness activities. Okay, we have already discussed what is mitigation and what is preparedness activities. Okay, in the previous session. Okay, here are certain examples for this pre-disaster stage or the mitigation and preparedness activities. Okay, first one, carrying out awareness campaigns, then strengthening the existing weak structures, preparation of disaster management plans at household and community level. All these comes under this before a pre-disaster stage. Okay, activities taken to reduce human and property losses caused by a potential hazard. Okay, that is pre-disaster stage. If we strengthen our buildings with earthquake-resistant implementations or some disaster resistance implementations, that activities, all those activities will comes under this pre-disaster stage. Then second one is during a disaster or disaster occurrence stage. These are the activities. Emergency response activities comes under this disaster occurrence stage. The initiatives taken to ensure that the needs and provisions of victims are met and suffering is minimized. That is the emergency response activities. Okay, there is immediate action or the immediate response taken during the occurrence of a disaster. That are the activities comes under this during a disaster or disaster occurrence stage. Then the third one is post-disaster stage. That is after a disaster. After a disaster, the response and recovery activities are done to fully recover from that damages or the damages caused during that occurred during that disaster. Okay, the response and recovery activities to fully recover from the damages, that activities comes under this or that initiatives comes under this post disaster stage. Okay. Okay, what is disaster management here? There are certain terms which we have already discussed: preparedness, responses, activities during a disaster, then recovery, mitigation. All these are already discussed previously, and the examples for the same are provided here. Just go through that. Then next one is relationship between disasters and development. Okay, relationship between disasters and development. Here there are certain realms. Okay, development realm, then disaster realm, positive realm, and negative realm. These are different phases or the different realms that indicated in this figure. Here, the horizontal axis of this circle is divided the circle into development realm and disaster realm. Okay, the upper portion is development and the lower portion is disaster realm. Then the vertical axis is divided the circle into two realms, positive realm in the right side and negative realm in the left side, and all these phases or all these fields are marked with certain development can reduce vulnerability in the first stage or the first quadrant. Then in this quadrant, that is disaster positive realm quadrant, that indicates that disasters can provide development opportunities. In this quadrant, disasters can set back development. In this quadrant, it is development can increase vulnerability. Okay, just moving on to the first one, this one, negative quadrant. Okay, this negative phase. Okay, that is disaster negative realm. Disaster realm, and it is a combination of disaster realm and negative realm, that is this portion. Disasters can set back development. Okay, disasters set back development programming, destroying years of development initiatives. That is, if the road improvements, transportation and utility systems, or the infrastructure improvement plans, or the future or the development initiatives that are taken in this infrastructure improvement are destroyed by a flood or are destroyed by a certain disaster, that comes under this session, that is disasters can set back development session or this phase. Okay, that is the first one, and this is the example. Infrastructure improvement, transportation and utility systems are destroyed by a flood. This is an example for this phase. Disasters setback development programming destroys years of development initiatives. That is the first phase. Then next one is the disasters can provide development opportunities. This is the next phase. Okay, new improvements in or new development programs are initiated after after a disaster for rebuilding. That is this phase means, or this phase indicates, rebuilding after a disaster provides significant opportunities to initiate development programs. Okay, a self-help housing program to rebuild housing destroyed by an earthquake. Okay, that is a new program, new development program initiated after an earthquake disaster. Okay, teaches new skills, strengthens community pride and leadership. Okay, that is an example of this phase, that is disasters can provide development opportunities, new development initiatives. That is the main point to be noted in that session or in that phase. Then next one is development programs, that is the negative positive phase. Then development programs can increase an area's susceptibility to disasters. Okay, development can increase vulnerability. That is the phase. Okay, development can increase vulnerability. How the developments can increase vulnerability? If we construct a road across a paddy field or across a natural flowing water stream. Okay, this road construction or this new construction will interact with or disrupt the natural flow of water during a rainy season, and that may result in causing a flood. Okay, that increases the vulnerability of that area, which may lead to the flood situation. Okay, it is an example for this session, that is development programs can increase areas vulnerability or areas susceptibility to disasters. Then the last one, that is positive segment. Okay, development programs can be designed to decrease the susceptibility to disasters and their negative consequences. In simply, development can reduce vulnerability in simple terms. Okay, this session or this field is indicated as development can reduce vulnerability. How? If we implement new ideas or new designs to reduce the effect of these disasters, or construction of earthquake resistant buildings, or construction of some buildings which have higher resistance to wind or high wind, that may help to decrease the vulnerability and increase the strength, or increase the strength to resist that certain disaster. That will definitely reduce the risk during that particular disaster. That is the segment disaster development can reduce vulnerability segment. It comes under this development positive realm, that is positive section. Just these all these are just for connecting the development with the disaster. Okay.